Hi everyone, it's me, Spring, the fiber enthusiast, and welcome to the channel. So what are you up to today? Today we're going to talk a little bit about recycling. So originally I had a Afghan and we moved, and during the process of moving, stuff sits in storage and things happen. Well, when I pulled out the Afghan, well, a couple different projects, mind you, and I was just disheartened because it was ruined to my liking. As far as looking at it the way it was, it felt like it was ruined, just sitting there for so long. And some of the Afghan ended up with, just rotted yarn, basically, is what you would moth eaten, whatever. And it had just, ugh, the yarn was not great in certain areas. So, me being me, I like to reuse, use again, and then use it some more if at all possible. Well, I decided that I was going to take on the task of ripping that out. And it was a task because it was not a little Afghan. This sucker was huge. And I decided to slowly rip it out, finding ends and then discarding the areas that needed to be discarded. And then, okay, now what am I going to do with it? As I've said in other videos, I am not a big person of heavyweight yarn. So 5, 6, and such. It's too much weight on my shoulders. So with that being said, this was worsted weight yarn, but it was doubled. So it was heavy. And instead of separating the strands as I was pulling it apart, I just kept them together. And I decided that I was going to go ahead and reuse this yarn, repurpose this yarn into another Afghan. But this time, because I had discarded so much of this yarn, I wanted to go ahead and knit it because you use a third less yarn in knitting than you do crochet. And I thought, just to be on the safe side, let me knit this and it'll just be a throw or something. Well, so this is part of it. It is multicolored, and now this is back Red Heart Super Saver at its best. And I have way more of this still sitting around, and a lot of it was just straight up this wine burgundy color. Well, I did knit it, and I knitted and knitted and knitted forever. I even did 2 sets of cables, one on about each side, about halfway in or a quarter of the way in, and then about a quarter of the way from the end. And I did that to, give it a little something other than just knitted Afghan. And I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, and this sucker is huge. And I still have a ton of this yarn left. So I'm sure I will be doing more with it eventually. But I put just a nice ribbing on each side and on the ends, plus the cabling that is in it. That was one of my repurpose projects. Instead of just tossing the whole Afghan and all that yarn that could be used, I wanted to go ahead and tear it down and utilize what I could. So I did that and made this. Now, other ones that I have ripped out from the past is like this. Again, 2 strands. What was I thinking back then? Holding 2 strands together for every Afghan I made, I think. But This is another one, and it's sitting on my shelf waiting for the next project to say, it's my turn. So, do you repurpose? Have you thought about repurposing some yarn from older projects? Or maybe have you crocheted with grocery bags and make plarn? I've done that as well. I made a plarn bag to hold more plastic or plastic projects that were made with plarn. And I was using those to make mats for the homeless because they're thick and they're durable and they don't absorb water and, the same as these do. So it helped with mats. And there was a big thing with plarn for a long time. Or taking an old, for instance, an old piece of fabric that was not an Afghan, was a blanket, and it's just fleece. Well, you can actually cut strips of that fleece and give it a tug, and it curls up on both sides when you do that. And now you have blanket yarn, fleece blanket yarn, and you can use that to crochet. Did you know that? You can use all kinds of things, materials, t-shirts. If you cut t-shirts a certain way and then cut it down the side and open it up, it's one big old long strand. Just kind of like when you do the outside of an apple on one of those apple peeling machines, and it's like this great big long corkscrew. You can do the same thing with t-shirts and have t-shirt yarn for different projects. I have used old jeans, old sheets, things like that, where I have stripped them down into strips, braided them, and sewn them together to make rugs. Repurposing a lot of these fabrics and or yarn to make new projects is a wonderful way to decrease our footprint as crafters. Now, this may not be your thing, and I completely understand, but I do know that there's all kinds of us that do like to hop into repurposing stuff like that. Or maybe you're like me and grew up around those hand-woven rugs that were out of really old, used up clothing. That was something that was made a lot in, back in my father's home, and back in even right before I was born, there was a lot of that happening. So is this something that you have done? Have you considered doing it? If you have done it or considered doing it, let me know your story down below. Is there something that is one of your new favorite objects that once was a favorite object that you had to repurpose because it was in rough shape? I would love to hear your stories of repurposing, reusing, use it up, wear it out, and use it again. And yeah, just let me know what you like to do to lower your footprint in your big footprint down into a smaller footprint in our crafting world. All right, everyone, that is it for me today. Be blessed, be a blessing, and until next time, bye for now.